Hello, my name is Dr. Charles Knight. I'm a professor in the Biological Sciences Department at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, California, in the Bailey College of Science and Mathematics. This is a series of lectures that I'm calling 10 lectures on ecosystem ecology. It's for my Bio 446 class, and you're free to watch them on YouTube, and we'll be posting more of them later this quarter. And some of them will be done by students who choose to contribute to this series. So enjoy. Our first target paper for this lecture series is our target paper number 6. We've studied 5 papers previously. I haven't had time to do these YouTube lectures for those papers, but we're starting here with this paper from Global Change Biology, published in 2022. And the title is Changes in Tree Drought Sensitivity Provided Early Warning Signals to the California Drought and Forest Mortality Event. And it was published by these authors, and I'm going to just highlight 3 of them. I can't go into detail on each of them. Science is a collaborative effort, and I think for students, especially starting out, it's useful to get to know a few of the leaders or key players on some of these papers, and that's why I choose to do some scientist vignettes, and that will follow. But I'm going to highlight Rachel Keene, the first author, and the last author, Christopher Still, and another author that I want the students to know about, Todd Dawson. So we'll start with Rachel Keene. Her education, she got a bachelor's degree at Kansas State University in 2015, a master's degree at Utah State University in 2019, and then a PhD in biology at the Kansas State again in 2023. And right now she's a postdoc at the Kansas Biological Survey and Center for Ecological Research at the University of Kansas. And her research interests are broadly include plant ecophysiology, ecohydrology, and biogeochemistry. And I bet that she learned stable isotope biology at Utah State University from Jim Elringer's lab. I'm hazarding a guess there. I don't know for sure. But this is a great paper, and it's broadly relevant to our class because right now we're studying chapter 5 or is it chapter 5? I believe, yeah, it's chapter 5 in Principles of Terrestrial Ecosystem Ecology, the book behind me here. And it deals with water and the environment. And I try to choose papers that are California centric just because students might be more familiar with the research sites. And this paper deals with a field site that's north of Fresno, and it deals with the major drought that California experienced about 10 years ago now. Can you believe it? For those of us who lived through it, it was 10 years ago. And now I'd like to highlight Chris Still. He did his postdoc, well, let's say first, he did his bachelor's degree at Colorado State University and then a PhD at Stanford University with me. That is, I was in the same class. I think that we came in on the same year and completed our PhDs at the same time at Stanford University. I believe your advisor, Chris, was Christopher Field. And then he went on to do postdoc research at University of California, Berkeley. I think it was probably with Todd Dawson, who I'll introduce next. And then I'm pretty sure he had a faculty position at UC Santa Barbara for a decade or so. And now he's at Oregon State University. I forgot to put the icon in there now. And his research interests are broadly in biogeography, ecophysiology, and ecosystem ecology. Lastly, I'll introduce Todd Dawson. He's a professor in the Department of Environmental Science, Policy and Management, and the Department of Integrative Biology at UC Berkeley. He's also the director of the Center for Stable Isotope Biogeochemistry at UC Berkeley, and he has a long history in plant ecophysiology and stable isotope ecology. Really has brought that to the forefront of the field of plant ecophysiology. This paper deals with stable isotope change in ponderosa pine tree rings and how it can be an indicator of drought stress in those plants. So Todd has been a major player in plant ecophysiology for a long time now. So I like to give the take-home points early in the paper, early in these presentations. Just what do you need to know from this paper? And these are the 4 points that I sort of highlighted for you. Again, the title is Changes in Tree Drought Severity Provided Early Warning Signals to the California Drought and Forest Mortality Event. And I just want students to know that there was a significant drought in California from 2012 to 2015. It was apocalyptic, and the effects of that drought are still being felt, I would say, to this day. Major tree mortality event in the Sierra Nevada, major drought-induced mortality all across Southern California. And this paper, we're able to detect that drought from Landsat images, using a normalized difference moisture index to visualize this drought at the field site they used north of Fresno. They also developed early warning signals, or EWS. They created an acronym for drought-induced mortality of trees using tree ring data and stable isotope data. So their goal is to try to come up with a predictive index of tree mortality events before they even happen, using tree ring width, growth ring width of those tree rings, or stable isotopes. And they suggest that thinning or fire made some sites more resilient to the drought, and that those could be used in forest management in the future, just to reduce the demand for water at some sites. So let me read the abstract. It's fairly long. I almost never do this, but the abstract is going to take 2 slides. I put the abstract up there and I just literally read the abstract. Scientists put a lot of effort into these abstracts, and actually I'm going to do the glossary notes first before I do that. I like to give some just glossary notes. First, normalized NDMI is normalized difference moisture index. The PDSI is the Palmer Drought Severity Index. It's just an index of how severe a drought is based on temperature and moisture, precipitation, and calculated evapotranspiration. It's been used for a long time. Very common metric in bioclimatology. RWI is the ring width increment of ponderosa pine. If it's larger, there's generally more water available. Delta is the difference. Remember your calculus. The reason I introduced that first is that delta 13C is a stable isotope measure of drought stress. We're not going to go into a lot of detail on that metric today. We will later in the quarter, but it's useful to know that this is the stable isotopes are non-radioactive isotopes of common elements. Delta 13C is the heavier isotope of carbon, and you can use it for drought severity index based on stomatal aperture. And going into too much detail here for what I have time to present from this paper, but I just wanted everybody to know that before I read the abstract. So this is the beginning of the abstract. Again, it's divided between 2 slides, and I'm just going to read it. I'll read the title first and then the beginning of the abstract, and I'll finish the abstract on the next slide. So changes in tree drought severity provided early warning signals to the California drought and forest mortality event. Climate warming in recent decades has negatively impacted forest health in the western United States. Here we report on potential early warning signals, or EWSs, for drought-related mortality derived from the measurement of tree ring growth or ring width index, RWI, and carbon isotope discrimination, delta 13C. Primarily focused on ponderosa pine, Pinus ponderosa, sampling was conducted at the southern Sierra Nevada mountains near the epicenter of drought severity and mortality associated with the 2012 to 2015 California drought and concurrent outbreak of western pine beetle. At this site, we found that widespread mortality was presaged by 5 decades of increasing sensitivity. This sensitivity word is important i.e. the sensitivity is the increased explained variation of both tree ring growth and delta 13C to Palmer Drought Severity Index. And I'm going to come back to that at the end of this presentation. It's the last figure I'm going to show. But those two words I think are important for our class, and to understand this increasing sensitivity is actually a stronger R squared, tighter correlation, tighter regression fit between those two variables, that is tree ring growth and Palmer Drought Severity Index, or delta 13C and Palmer Drought Severity Index. I'll get back to that. We hypothesize that increasing sensitivity of tree growth and delta 13C to hydroclimate constitutes EWS, or early warning signals, that indicate an increased likelihood of widespread forest mortality caused by direct and indirect effects of drought. We then tested these early warning signals in additional ponderosa pine-dominated forests that experienced varying mortality rates associated with the same California drought event. In general, drier sites showed increasing sensitivity of RWI to PDSI over the last century, as well as higher mortality following the California drought event compared to wetter sites. Two sites displayed evidence that thinning or fire events that reduced stand basal area effectively reversed the trend of increasing hydroclimate sensitivity. These comparisons indicate that reducing competition for soil water and/or decreasing bark beetle host tree density via forest management, particularly in drier regions, may buffer these forests against drought stress and associated mortality risk. Early warning signals such as these could provide land managers more time to mitigate the extent or severity of forest mortality in advance of droughts. Substantial efforts at deploying additional dendrochronological research in concert with remote sensing and forest modeling will aid in forecasting of forest responses to continued climate warming. That was a mouthful. That was a long abstract, and almost one of the reasons I didn't select it, but the paper deals with such a California topic, this California drought 2012 to 2015. I remember it, and it was a big deal. California is really a boom and bust environment always, and that drought really kind of set us back. We've had some wet years recently, and we just looked at how those 2 wet years before the Palisades fire, that is just the most recent 2 years, may have led to vegetation overgrowth. But that's the boom, I guess, and the bust is the fires. But then this drought was significant. It's worthwhile knowing about. So I really wanted to present this paper, and it's by some of my idols, Todd Dawson, my friends, Chris Still, and also an up-and-coming new scientist in the area, Rachel Keene. So I wanted to do this paper. So this is their figure number 1, and it's beautiful. It's got a lot of data, and this is just one of so many figures in the paper, and I'm only going to present 2 figures, figure 1 and figure 5, because we can't go on. We don't have enough time to go into all the detail, but this is a map. I'm going to show first. We'll start at the left-hand side, or actually, we'll start out with figure 1A. This is a map of Southern California, Central California, well, basically the Sierra Nevada. And the green area, so this is a map of NDMI, which is Normalized Difference Moisture Index. And this is a difference between the wet years and the dry years. And basically it's a difference in 2016 from I forget exactly which 2 years it was, but it's a difference. The delta is a difference in NDMI between 2 years, and you can see there's a greater difference, or a high difference, red, in the southern Sierra Nevada, directly in these ponderosa pine forests that they studied at SOS and SNF. Those are 2 field sites, And then they just zoom in on those field sites and then show these differences in a greater detail and the actual, almost down to the level of trees that they sampled. So the drought was really bad in the Southern Sierra. That's one take-home point from this slide. And they can use these Landsat satellite images to calculate a metric of a spectral signature of the drought, and it was very useful for them. I'm just going to check my, yeah, there was a notification in my messages there. So looking at it, you see that just basically it's really bad in that Southern Sierra Nevada area. And that's why, and we're seeing lots of tree mortality, including giant sequoia trees in this area. And this is part of the impetus to develop some metric of predicting how bad it is and when it's going to get really bad. So figure 5H, this is one of many figures in figure 5, shows the relationship between annual climactic moisture deficit. A greater deficit means more drought, essentially, and the running R squared of RWI versus PDSI. So a higher number on that y-axis means a tighter correlation between ring width increment and Palmer Drought Severity Index. So with really dry years with a greater deficit on the x-axis, you get a stronger correlation between ring width increment and PDSI in those years. That's SOS is one of the field sites. All of the acronyms on those dots are different field sites. If we go down to the bottom left, you see KEW. I forget what the name of that field site is, but it had the least amount of drought and it had the loosest correlation between RWI, ring width increment, and PDSI. And going across all these sites, there were, 7 different sites here. You can see a tight correlation between this annual climactic moisture deficit and this running R squared of RWI versus PDSI. I know that might seem a little abstract for you, and I'm requiring you to remember R squared being the tightness of the fit between two variables, and that's just the y-axis. No fit on the bottom of the y-axis, strong fit the higher up you go on the y-axis, and we see that you get a stronger fit in drier years, and that's why they say that ring width increment could be used as a predictor of drought-induced mortality, because what comes after this is mortality of those trees, and that's negative for forest management. I'm going to go back to my take-home points. First, again, there was a significant drought in California from 2012 to 2015. In this paper, they used satellite or Landsat-based normalized difference moisture indices to visualize the drought at their field site north of Fresno. They developed early warning signals, or EWSs, for drought-induced mortality of trees using tree ring and stable isotope data. And thinning or fire made some sites more resilient to drought and could be used in forest management in a predictive way. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in class.